Hi, everyone. Excuse me. Hi, good morning. Good afternoon. Yeah, it's afternoon now, I guess, so I just didn't really see a reason to stream this morning though. It just was not the best range. Yeah, I hope not, because my nephew is sick and he was over yesterday. So let's hope not. I think I just have bad allergies sometimes in the morning. Okay, so I did let you guys know that I'm trying the long down here a few minutes ago. I went long right in here. A little bit higher than I would have wanted to. Like, I probably should have tried going long off 64.90, 64.93, but I just want to confirm that there was some better structure this time. So I waited till they retraced back over 64.94, 96. I tried along at the 9.95 area. Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to copy paste that here. I was just saying that when yeah, not down here. I took the long here. Did you guys join the long setup? So most are long off 9397. I would say that the better area, the reason why 9397 was a little bit better is it was just more constructive. Like, obviously, like, the bottom of the zone is best, and we'll cover this session in a bit here. I think it's pretty straightforward. So we had a bit of a gap down. This already kind of gave me the tone for the week. Do you see this? This already kind of set the tone. So they did test the 8.9 area, but they did open beneath 8.8, but still above 8.2, 7.8. So it kind of identified that there could be some back and forth. Nice. I think my fill was around average of like 95.50. Because I sent that after I got filled. Okay, so overnight conditions was that we had to try holding core ranges, which they did a really good job of. They never went back beneath 7.8, but they had to try their best to this time come back and test and break the neutral ranges, so like 65.03, 07, 08, 10, to come back and eventually maybe try tagging the 65.22 area. We weren't able to tag that today, or overnight, which is fine, because usually when we have CPI, we're usually stuck where? Like pre-release. Where are they typically stuck? And this is why I figured they could just go back and forth today in the zone, which is exactly what they're doing. Why could that be the case? So here's the zone. Okay. This is the zone. And today we've got pretty high odds of being a zone day, because that's typically almost always where they take things before like a major release. So do you see how they've left room on both sides here? Do you guys see that? So I would say a little bit of room beneath or above 8.8, and a little bit of room beneath like the 20 area. I'd say like close to like this range in here. Do you see it? So, because once you hit 20, then you're closer to core ranges. And this could be adjusted even slightly if you wanted like closer to 8.7. just so it's more aligned with 16 and 20. So do you see this? So we had pretty high odds that this is likely where they'd hold. I didn't really think that they would take it too much lower based on where they stalled overnight. Does that make sense? Like based on them stalling 16. If they had maybe stalled around 14, okay, or like 13, then I would have assumed that they probably would have tested 8-8 on the very first attempt. Does that make sense? So we didn't really have super high odds that they would take it beneath that. They did also, though, breach beneath the zone by about 7 points. We've had about 7 points offsetting for a while now. And I figured this is probably implying like the past overhead near 2375 area. Do you see this? So all of this leads to them having some odds of wanting to get this back to the 2050 to 2024 range. I haven't actually measured off opening range or anything like that yet. We'll do that in a second here. I just kind of want to show you guys the zone conditions. So overnight back here, this was probably the best odd that they had of actually getting a nice break, because this was the hold of 9.3, 9.4. I feel like if they would have held closer to 9.7, kind of like how they did right here, they might have had a better odd of clearing, but they just couldn't get over that 59.0875, 59.1075 back in here. So a little bit of a stall there, which is what took them back down. These were all like the tiny, tiny, tiny reductions that we had. Okay. Does that make sense? And they weren't much, but I feel like this little tiny bit right here, probably the same offset of them not hitting 10.7 or yeah, 10.75 right here. Do you see it? And it might be something similar up here, so there could be some odds that they get caught like close to here. Let's take a look, like close to 18. Let's take a look at what the actual opening ranges were though. So from today's real-time session open, I think they opened it neutral, right? 65.01, which is not bad, but like they're still opening like near this orange area, which really is not like the best spot to stall. Okay, see, this makes sense. So this is 15.5 points, and we said the offset is about 1.75. So this makes sense, because if they would have cleared this a 1.75 higher above today's opening range, that would have given us the 17-point break. Do you see this up here? So that's where there's a little bit of a constraint. And I would bet that this area here is probably close to the 22, 23. Yeah, it is. So we've got a lot of overhead between 65.18, 65.20.50, 65.22.75, 65.23.75. I really didn't think that they would take this above the zone today, though. It's too early in the week. Because when is CPI? What day is CPI this week? Wednesday or Tuesday? Let me go back and double check that. I was pretty sure it was Thursday. I thought CPI was on Thursday. We have PPI on Wednesday. So that means that they could keep us back and forth for a few days. Does that make sense to you guys? Like maybe for a minimum of 2 days, potentially up to 3. So that's why they might keep recycling the ranges in the zone. Does that make sense to you guys? And where they opened us this week at 65.8375, that's a very good open to keep us sideways. Does that make sense? Because if they opened us closer to like 64.88 plus, 64.90s plus, we had way higher odds of like actually filling the zone. So another way of looking at this too is from the actual session open for the week versus even like an ideal open, like closer to like 9.3, let's say. Let's just go with 9.3. Or obviously we wanted closer to 9.7 or 9.6, which would have been the 13-point ratio from there. Do you see that? This could limit us this week. Does that make sense to you guys based on what they did here? And that makes so much sense since we've got 3 days to potentially have to kill and just trade sideways, which I know sounds like the worst case scenario, but so we could have multiple back-to-back inside days is what I'm trying to say if they don't break range probably by tomorrow. Okay, so, and to me this makes sense because where they stall, that's probably the top of the zone here. Do you see this? So like right around here, do you see that? That's the overall reduction off like 9.7 and where they actually opened. 9.7 would have been a more ideal open. Even the 5-point reduction here off like 8.8 or previous close, this could have given us a break to the 22 area. Do you see that? So they've reduced odds of like 6.522, 6.533 on purpose, just to kind of keep us a little bit sideways. Which, it's not the worst case scenario, it's just so you guys can see where these ranges are aligned. Okay, so for today's session, especially based off like this actual session open, so let's measure off session open. I never had a chance to clean my chart this weekend, I'm sorry. So from highs to lows, they've already hit 36 points, okay? So from a high to low ratio, we do have odds of getting back to at least 65.14, okay? From a low to high ratio. They've already broken that. What kind of range have we been averaging? Don't get this wrong. Try to get this right. What kind of range have we been averaging? So from a opening range to a high range, we've actually only hit 32.75. So do we still have a tiny bit more room here to push from an opening range perspective? Okay. No, we've been averaging something else. It's not 34 and it's not 44. You guys should know what it is because we went over it a lot last week. We have been hitting 44-point ratios some days, but I'm just saying, like, from where they actually triggered, we have been hitting something else. It's the median. Nope. No. We did hit 55 and 56 some days, but based on the few sessions, what have we been hitting on average? Like, I know these sessions here we hit, but for like a lot of the real-time sessions, a lot of these real-time sessions, like back in here, they hit 44, 32, especially on the inside days. What kind of range have we been hitting? It's been a very, very common theme. Yeah, the half point, close to like 38, 39 points. Even on Friday's session, they did that after stalling here. Like between, like the median between 34 and 44, so like around 38, 39 points. So there could be a chance that if they did take out the 34-point range off today's open, let's say, and maybe they don't want to give full range, okay? Like, let's say they break 65, 16, 18. If they don't give full range, do you see how they could hit a 38-point ratio and maybe we trigger like 65, 22, 23? Do you see it? Off a low range, that would make sense that you could hit like 41, 42 points, maybe 44. That's where you'd have odds of like 65, 23, 75, 65, 44. So I feel like these are probably the more likely ratios that we're working with today. But we haven't even broken like a 17-point ratio off open. So that at least needs to break in order for us to get some actually good structure. Do you see how they're kind of just stuck right here right now? right back at OR. Do you see this? You guys? This is why they're struggling to get back to highs. Can you see this? And what is 17 points from today's session open? Think about it. What is 17 points from today's session open, today's session low? And this isn't a coincidence that they did that. Okay, so today's session open, which was 64.8375, to today's session low is what? What did that end up being? This should give you an idea of the theme for the session today. Where did we start the session? What did they do at 9:30? This should have stood out to you guys. What did they do at 9:30 this morning? This is the opening range stick. What did they do this morning? This should help you understand the kind of range and direction for the session today, just off this opening stick. So for starters, they sustained 17 points off real-time opening low, okay, from session open. Does that make sense? 6,500.75 is 17 points off session open. What else happened this morning? So that implies that maybe they do want to trade within 34 point ratios, okay? Just based on that. What else happened this morning? So they open at 65.0450, which is what? Little bit beneath 2.2, but do you see how that could hint better odds of like 38, 39, 40, 41? Yes? Your opening range 6 should help give you an idea of range, you guys. You guys have to get way better at this. You have to start doing these sorts of range practices on your own and actually start implementing them when you're trading. Based on the high range, okay, where they hit like range highs, they hit 23 points. Is that giving us odds of breaking potentially? 44 point range? Like, do you see what I'm saying? And that kind of makes sense because when they broke 34 points off lows, they actually broke by like, how many points was that when they broke off lows? They broke by 2.25. Okay. Off the actual session lows, they did open above a 22 point ratio. Do you see this? Off like the actual session lows. So that's good. Off session lows to real-time opening lows, they hit 20.75. So I'd say like the most common denominator is probably that 20.75 range. Does that make sense, you guys? So I would think that that's probably going to be the, like this is 24, this is probably 26. When we trade within 24, 26, 29 ranges, what kind of price action does that usually give you? Well, sideways, right? A lot of back and forth. So even just off the opening ranges, I can already tell that this could be some sideways PA. But the fact that they're at least over 17 point ratios and some are over 22 point ratios, some are kind of in between, means that they could still meet the end goal, but it just might take all day. Does that make sense? And it could take from open to close. So I would think that based on those metrics that we looked at, they probably have some odds of like 20.75 being the most common. Like if we hit 41.5 points like max range on the whole session today, I wouldn't really be surprised if that was the case, because that would be like close to 65.21.50, and that makes sense because they might do something where they break 65.16.75 basically, stall 65.22, 65.23. Does that make sense? Those are two pretty probable scenarios, I think, if they wanted to do something like that. Whereas obviously if they broke, you know, 23.5, like that's when you'd start hitting like your 45-46 ratios. And that's obviously where you could have some odds of retesting these ranges here, like upper bull zone. I think those odds are pretty low today, to be honest. And a lot of it was going to be based on what they do back in this area here, like above 6498 and beneath that 65.01.02. Let's just mark those opening ranges for now. You see that they're kind of struggling here a little bit. Like even this little reduction stick, well, it's not even little, that's a pretty big reduction stick. Like this right here, this could have probably gone back and retested that opening range high. Do you see this? Like 65.07 area. So they're definitely reducing range and stalling a little bit here. And I was kind of looking to see, like back in here, like this breakdown was about 17-18 minutes until they finally took direction, like 18-19 minutes. So I was wondering if we'd have maybe some similar odds right here coming up. So probably in the next 2 minutes is when they'd really have to start looking to see if they're going to break range or not. Probably even as early as here. And I would think that these all align back to like that opening range high. Do you see that? Are odds for this week that high in general? Hey? Did we have high odds this week, you guys, or not? Not really. Not really, and if we did, they were a little bit later in the week anyways. So what's 2 things you can do this week that can help you a little bit? And not having those paper cut trades. Especially if they start breaking this out into 2 parts. I do like the 4-day setup a lot, because this one does show a little bit of a better structure than the daily. Yeah, sleep in, that's a good answer. I would say probably buy some time, maybe take less trades, maybe look at some individual names. Those are all some really good ways of looking at this. 5 days not bad too, because it kind of shows like the inside ranges that we could be stuck till the 15th. So just some, and I know it's a really shitty range to be stuck in because you're basically like just above core areas, just beneath like the top of the zone and top of the channel. So it kind of like your upside reward is not very high and your downside risk is not very low, if you think about it like that, because 65.48 would be the top of your channel. Okay, I feel like that should give you guys like a pretty good idea on how to handle the week. If you don't really grasp that concept, you should probably go back and review the report, because the theme for the report is that we could be a little bit stuck this week, right? So these are some odds here for potentially turning this around, kind of like they did back here. What kind of price action do we need to see happen here right now? You guys think? Quickly. Yeah, we need some sticks here. We need some decent follow-through price action after this period here. So we had the better odds around the 11th, 12th. We could have some odds as early as the 10th, but odds were definitely a lot higher. 16th, 17th, 18th, 22nd, 23rd. There we go. That's the kind of stick you need to see. Right back to that opening range. That's the answer I was looking for, by the way. Like, we need sticks, but sticks to where? Do you see what I'm saying? Sticks back to OR and opening range lows. 6500.75, 6501 was the opening range lows and close. And notice where this is breaking off of too. Pay close attention here. This is a very, very, very calculated point in time and some calculated price points. What's happening here? Where are they breaking off of and where are they breaking to? Think about it. Where are they breaking off of and where are they breaking to? 6503.75 is a calculated area. I know it's not part of today's open, but this area here is calculated. Okay, where are they breaking off of and where are they breaking to? Well, you could do straddle positions today. Like, today's a really good back and forth. Do you guys see where they're holding off of? Are our odds a little bit better this time? Think about it. Okay. Where else did they retrace right away? So look at where they're... Do you see where they stalled earlier back here? Where did they retrace right away? So what kind of sticks do you need to see happen here? Do you want to stall 03 again? What's your conditions? Especially now that it's almost 3 o'clock. No, so I would say that in order for this to be progressive and constructive, you have to test at least 6503.75, ideally 6504.50, which that's the opening range, right guys? 65, what was opening range today? 6504.50. Okay. Do you see how this would be a more constructive cleared trade, cleared break, whatever you want to call it? And the ranges that they reduced us by earlier were about 4 points, 4.25, 4.75. I think the average was like 4.75, max of 5 points, I think, or something like this, 6 points. So the minimum this was implying is that they could take us back to test here, which is great because that's exactly what we need. That's literally the opening range highs. Does that make sense? Okay. On a wider basis, it's implying that they might give us an odd of retesting close to here. So maybe there could be some overhead around this 12.10 spot, okay? This area here. So this is what I'm seeing. But we need constructive sticks. You can't stall. You have to try testing at least the 6503.75. How much time is left in the stick? Let's see. So these areas here we can't fail on the first attempt. you probably want to break these. Like this range in here. So let's see what kind of price action we get here. It's always more fun to watch on the second charts when you know it's a specific point in price that they have to clear. I would imagine that there's probably some odds close to just before 3, like around 250, 254. Look at, you guys see the volume slightly increasing here too at these price points? Liquidity starting to come in around that 6503, 6503.50 spot. 07, 53, 6503.75 is the wall. This is where we'd want to see some good structure breaks here. And again, probably around this 250, 254 period. There's usually pretty decent odds at this point in the day. Also a nice structure. So we could also think that maybe since they started turning around right here off the 17, 18 point mark. What's the half point interval of that, guys? Of like 18 to 17 to 19 minutes. Probably close to here. That's why 250 would likely be calculated, right? Close to here. So these next 3-4 minutes are going to be super important. I think 9.5 is the exact mark, so pretty high odds around like 51, 52. So this has to be the point in time for turnaround. If they could do it off the half increment, then we have really good odds to have continuation. Do you see what I'm saying? So then we'd have some good odds to have continuation through 3 o'clock. 3, 301, 302. Okay, so some really good odds here just before and just after 3. If they're able to clear this wall here. If they don't clear during this point in time, is that okay? Like if they don't clear the 0450 overhead opening range, is that okay during this period here? Yes, as long as there has to be a condition. You can't just say yes because we have time. Yes, we have time, but you also have to do something else. It's not just about time, it's also about something else. Sustain, yeah, probably have to sustain that 65.75, 65.01. Okay. What's your second condition here? So you can delay as long as you sustain and as long as you, yeah, you have to at least try retesting the 65.0375 wall. Okay, they did test it up here and they did it right off 4.8, which was just before that half point interval from here. Like this was the half point off the 8-minute mark. Okay, and then they had the 2 reduction sticks. This was the earliest odd that they had of clearing, so it makes sense that they reduced there. So they reduced by 2.5 points. 2.5 point reduction might have been the best case scenario because maybe they would have stalled 0650 or 0625. So sometimes they reduce or delay because they knew that they wouldn't meet the range that was required. Okay? I'm going to watch 5-4 because that's usually a generic flip, but It seemed like the better odds were around 593, 301. Some wide reduction in range off the cutoff stick. I did mark 5.4 just to see if it's a negation post volatility at 5.3 because this is the, I think this was the cutoff on the 50% mark. What has to happen here, guys, off the 5-4 flip, especially with this kind of break back beneath? Look at what happened in the first 5 seconds. Do you guys see that? Yeah, it has to retrace that 6,500.75 fast. Okay, so that's an immediate retracement within the first 5 seconds of that opening stick. This is already implying that there's some reduction here. It's probably the same reduction though, like that 1.75 to 2 points that they had off this range in here. Let's do a poll. You guys can vote on that. I'm only going to set it to a minute. We do have consumer credit, I think, at 3. I didn't see anything else in the calendar, though. We have to really start looking at our odds now here, too. So, if they don't get back over opening range during this period, okay, you guys? Like, let's say before 3 or just after 3. Okay? What kind of odds is this setting us up for end of session today? Or for like the remainder of the session, for the last hour, you guys think? You have to start thinking about your probabilities. Yeah, and it depends where you're pinnable, right? So obviously if you're beneath OR before 3, probably not going to be the best pinnable session because then you'd still be at risk of retesting overnight lows, maybe just resetting the session opening pin, like around, since we had such a shitty open at 8.3, maybe all they really want to do is reset the opening pin to like 9.3, 9.7, 9.6. Do you get what I'm saying? If we're trading above this range, then we might have a better odd of actually retesting 65.08, 65.10. Do you get what I'm saying? Maybe some slight odds to extend to 65.17, 18 if they're able to take out maybe the high range, because if you can take out the high range of 07 during this period, then it gives you an odd of maybe retesting the highs. Does that make sense? So a lot of our odds are going to be based off what they do in the next few minutes here. So far it's looking pretty pinnable unless we start getting some constructive sticks in like the next 5 minutes. We had very low odds during this period, so them even just kind of sitting here and nesting is fine. Probably want to start seeing some good turnaround sticks though off 5.8, 5.9, 3. We haven't even tested 65.04 yet, so Yeah, they just kind of set us up so that they can just make these sessions pinnable, sadly. But it's okay. They're doing the same thing here again. Like, you see when they start getting very close to the cutoff periods, like they did at 5-2, 5-3, how they start bringing down range. What's something that's a little bit different this time, though, that stands out to you guys? So this would be the same sort of stick as 50. What's different here this time? This is actually better, even if it doesn't look like it's better. Why is this a little bit better this time? I was saying, like, why would this be a little bit better than it might have been back here? Like, I know back here at 250 they held above 6500.75, 6501, and back here they broke beneath. But what's one reason why it might actually end up working as a advantage, I guess, for trying to come back and retest the 6503? Yeah, that's one reason, but something else. And really, it's kind of getting close to a cutoff here, so they still have to retrace. Which, ideally, you'd want that to happen off the 3 o'clock stick. What do you guys think? You guys were a little late in answering the question. That the answer would have been because they still have some time. So this was happening a little bit earlier than later. I feel like the 2 or the 3 o'clock stick, though, definitely prevented that from getting like the better kind of range on the upside, but they still have time to do what here? And it kind of sucks when like they take it all the way back, but sometimes it's required if they knew they weren't going to break range. They still have enough time to try to retrace. Okay, and this point and a half could be the offset here. That could take it to 6504, 75, 6504, 50. Do you see what I'm saying? If they actually can hold this low here, though. They cannot afford to take it back beneath this 9796 area. How much pressure do we have around that 302 period, 303, if this is the case? Where do they close at 259, you guys? 6500.25, so what, just beneath the opening range low? This could make this a very pinnable close. This is the O2 stick, right? So the only good thing here is that they actually still sustained higher than this 9725. This time made a bit of a higher low. But I do think that 0203 definitely needs to start trying to retrace that 6500.75, 6501, just because they took it back beneath before the end of that interval. So this could imply that they might keep this quite pinnable in these ranges into the close here this afternoon. can maybe watch to see if there's like an extended interval from the midpoints that they stalled. I think that'd be closer to like 306, 307, 308. I don't think so, honestly. I mean, obviously I could be wrong, but that's just how I'm reading this. Like, this looks pretty pinnable to me. It was super pinnable Friday, you know what I mean? And we were really spot on about that. Like, we luckily at least ended up getting that extra push to 9.3 on Friday, but it did take all afternoon. So if they do want to try pushing OR, it might not be until just before the close. And that could really limit your range on the session. What's that, Smos? Oh. How do I change that? Like, I know... Oh, I see, under category for editing stream info. But what would I even put it as? Like, because I think I tried one time putting finance and nothing came in. So, like, I don't really know what to put in there. I guess stocks and bonds. Well, I don't know. The other stock people on here have it under just chatting. I feel like just chatting would be better. There's probably more viewers there. Trading doesn't really have much that comes up, unfortunately. So I think just chatting is probably better. Thank you for that pointer, though. I did see it when I was changing the stream info this morning, but I didn't really think to put it in there. Yeah, we'll see. Maybe that'll help the viewer count, because it has been a little bit lower than usual. I didn't post on Twitter today though, so I don't know if that's why. But even then, last week I barely averaged 80 viewers, like max, which is pretty low. Because I think it was averaging like 50 to 60 versus like 70 to 80. Honestly, this isn't a bad day though to make like a few dollars here and there. Like buying like the back tests, reselling them. Like I've had 3 trades of back and forth, and it's been like even earlier this morning. I did try the long setup back here off the first hold of 9.6. This was probably the cleanest trade that we had today. And then I knew that they could chop around in this area, so I just did not touch anything beneath 07 or I guess between 9.8. Like this whole area here was just chop, right? You have better odds down here. So now we're back in this choppy zone. Yeah, that's true. But, I mean, I do tell people where I enter and cover, though. But a lot of people probably don't care for, like, the fine detail in between. You know what I mean? Like, why we would buy off 9.4 to 9.6 area. Even the delay here, they still are keeping this stuck beneath OR. Oh, that's annoying. But we knew that that would be like a really high probability, though, right? Like zone bound pre PPI, CPI release. Like that makes total sense, and that's usually always the case. So if they have to keep recycling the zone, then they only have so many points to work with. How many points are in the zone? How many points compose of the zone, you guys? In the zone? No. No, 44. Big Daddy's right. It's around 43, 44 points. I mean, that still wasn't a bad trade from, I think I had like $1.05 entries. And some decent covers near 150 and 160, but it's just really slow price action on that stall. You could definitely do a short hedge. But if you're going to do a short hedge, make sure you're doing it above the 65, like 01 area. You have a better odd of a short hedge though here after 3 based on the fact that they kept it beneath there before 3. So odds of coming back and retesting increased a little bit. Plus, do we still have room on downside for the session? Is there still some room on downside for the real-time session? Based on the ranges we discussed this morning. Yeah, a little bit. Not that much, but like maybe 2-3 points. So, yeah, short hedge is not. That's why I was saying you could trade both sides. I did do a short hedge too off the 6501 stall. It's a kind of a day to do nice straddles back and forth. Because we could easily get a retest now of like 6490.5 and possibly hit that 8788 this time. And mostly because this period here was a bit of a cutoff to see if they'd come back and try to retrace, and they didn't. Do you see this? And they kept it at 6498.75, which is good because at least it's like near this 6499, but it did take it back to the bear zone. Do you see what I'm saying during this period? So some odds to retest here. I would think that if they take out this real-time low, we had those, whatever we talked about earlier, I think down to like 87, 88. I don't really want to go back to like session opening range though, if that makes sense. Like back to 83, 84, 81. I don't want that. I do want them to at least still try holding the zone. Does that make sense? I'd cover the rest of my long trade off that stall and then try to short hedge. Let's measure the half increments from here too. I think the half increments would be like right here. And then off 301, 302, they're probably, because we said 302, 03, yeah, this was the cutoff, right? 02, 03. These would be like the 9.5 minute mark. So this is the half point interval here. So probably some of the odds of retesting the low of day right now. And then I think there's going to be an odd of turnaround probably by like 3:15, 3:16. See? Where did they test, guys? 6491. The low of days 6490.5. So they still have 1 minute here. I'll let you guys know when I cover the short hedge here, because I think they still have a minute to try taking it lower. Probably, actually 2 minutes, sorry. And then I think maybe a minute and a half window to try to retrace. And it would make sense, like, doing it off of here. There's also an odd that they could just try holding closer to 6493. I don't think that that's going to be the case, but we'll see here. The only way that that would be the case is if they retrace during this period here, because 1415 would have to be like the downside sticks, or like the retesting sticks. So if they start retracing up, that means that they don't want to take it lower. Make sense? And by retracing, probably need at least back to 9496. I just want to delete this. This is the window, but just to see. So if 1516 decide to hold the line, you probably need back at least over 97 at that point in time. These should be the sticks that decide. Because then there's potentials for those extensions around here. Do you see how they made that so back and forth on this? I don't think so, Elgo, because if they wanted to do that, they would have probably tried pushing down the 14 stick. And you see how like 15 tried in the first 5 seconds? I mean, you do have an odd at like 16. You could give it the full 2 minutes or a minute and a half if you want to. But so far, it seems like they're trying to hold the line. Because remember how I said they could take it that 1.75 lower, or they can actually sustain it 1.75 higher? And a lot of that's going to depend on, yeah. I covered off the 115 just because it seemed like they weren't gonna take it down. That's what I was seeing. I don't know if that helped you guys, but it looked like they wanted to hold. I could tell based off that 14-15 stick. Because if they wanted to break it down, they would have probably closed red at 14. And they wouldn't have come back and retraced 9394 at 15. Because then it gives an odd of 16 to retrace. Especially if the extended period was minimum here, 7, 8. So there's still some odds at the 9.5 minute interval, which is 317, 318. So you have to be very, 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 very strategic with the longs and shorts on these types of trade setups. Also, it makes sense too because they stalled 65.04.50 by like 1 point, so they might sustain lows by 1 point. Does that make sense? And sustaining lows by 1 point might give you the odd of breaking back to OR by 1 point because you're basically offsetting, if that makes sense. And this is more of a pinnable session, so it would make sense that they would offset range. We just had really good metrics based on the fact that we knew the time that it has to break down by. So really had to try breaking down around the 14 mark. That's why I covered off that 15 stick. Does that make sense to you guys? I tried another long here off the 16 hold of 9.5. Only because there's a window here at 318 and like the 30-second interval. Probably going to be a lot of back and forth still though, I would think. I left one contract on this short just in case, but I did cover like 4 of the 5. And then I did a smaller size on the long than I did earlier just because they could end up making this pinnable. I don't like that they brought it beneath the 6501 before 3 because it kind of gives us bad odds for the last hour, but this will probably be my last trade for the day, I think. Do you guys see how they're compressing range here, though? You guys have to understand it. You have to see how they're compressing range, because what they're basically doing is they're stalling like each side by about a point. So they've got a little bit of downside room, right? And then a little bit of upside room. And they're doing it intentionally so that they can kind of compress this until end of session today. So you've got like a point here. Okay, a point here, and based off OR, which side so far has slightly better odds, you think? So let's say off this low here to where we could probably afford some downside risk. Do you see what I'm saying? This is probably the 9.5 interval here off that, what's it called? That 13 stick. So I would imagine that this off our, is that the 15? No, 14, 15. Probably close to like 325 or 24, 25. And then the 18, 19, 27, 28. That's probably the cutoff for this turning around, okay? So you can't be stuck in this area here around those points in time. Like, I think right now it's still kind of okay being in the median points between like 9.3, 9.4, 9.6. But you see how you really need to get back over the 9.7 wall during that period here. Delete that. If you took the log, make sure you have a very, very, very tight stop, because it's a very tight window, and the duration of the hour is still leans on the bear side more than it does on the bull side. Especially when you start hitting like these windows here. Because there isn't really any directional trade as long as you're above 9.3 but beneath 9.7 basically. $324 to $327 is the window. So that's essentially the window that they have to decide if they want to come back, break down the lows, or come back and try retesting that 9.7 wall. Or they could also keep it stuck sideways, which would be like holding the line here at 9.3, stalling 9.5, 9.6. That would be like a sideways scenario. What kind of trades are best around these types of ranges this afternoon, you think? Yeah, because they don't have too much range to work with. Because they could even breach 9-3 but hold 9-1. So this kind of breakdown right here and then slight retracement here is telling me that they probably want to keep it a little sideways. Does that make sense? Because they'll take it a little bit lower but then maybe retrace it a tiny bit higher. Kind of like that. This type of session today, this is a session that's really good for what? If you're an options trader, let's say. Let's say you're not a futures trader. Let's just say you're an options trader. Yeah, that's one thing. Or you could probably sell. I think today's a pretty good day for selling. Or just doing straddles on each side, really. As long as you know the areas of risk reward. Is this a really big area for RR? What do you guys think? Is this a big area for risk to reward? No, because you're kind of like right in between. Even if they took it back to like actual session highs to session lows, you're kind of just stuck in like this is like the 50% intervals. Like this is just a yellow box range, kind of like the 38. Even if they had extensions to here, this is still not really the best area to be trading in. If it's more realistic within our zone of like 8.7, 8.8, and maybe limited closer to 18, same thing, right? Your upside overhead is closer to like 65.01, 02, 03. Do you get what I'm saying? So you start having really limited range in here. If they actually limit us to like the 07 area, then you're as limited to like 9.7 now. Do you see that? And that makes total sense. So they're really starting to compress range a lot in these areas here. We had some odds of back testing here around 2.7, 2.8. Or they can even still come back and retrace. This was the zone that they closed it in before 3 o'clock, so it made sense that, or at 3 o'clock, so it made sense that they might keep it here. But just before 3, what do you guys notice? Which zone was this in just before 3? I know it was trading above or beneath 65.01, 6500, but it was still in this zone here ahead of 3. So does that give them odds to take it back to this area here into the close? By 3:59, let's say. It does, so it kind of makes it so that like this zone area here and this zone area here is likely the range that you're going to trade within this last hour. Which really is not a fun range. You see how they keep negating odds of continued downside here too, like off 2.7. They're trying a little bit here at 2.8. We'll see what they do during imbalance prints. If you were going to try some long hedges, let's say, against like a short position, what price point do you think would make sense down here? I would say if they're going to sustain the zone, then you could try around the 9-1, 9-2, 9-3 because there's a chance that they might not take that low range out. Do you get what I'm saying? Especially if they want to try breaking the upside. If they want to try saving this downside, but stalling the upside, then yeah, then they could break it down to like 8-9, 8-8. But you still have time to try breaking back upside. You get what I'm saying? So if you wait for 8-8, 90, 8-9, you might miss your entry point. Do you get what I'm saying? So it'd be like beneath 9-3, above 8-9. Okay? Because it still has time to come back and retrace. And then you'd have to be okay with having a 2 to 3 point stop loss. What's one reason actually that could be the case? I'm giving you guys the answer, so you literally can't get it wrong. What's one reason why that might be the case? That maybe you'd want to try closer to 9-1, 9-2, and then set a tight stop versus waiting for 8-9, 8-8. Okay, they based higher lows each time off these structures. And it's not like they didn't test 6503.75. They still did test that wall, okay? So even though there's still some odds that they could stall and come back, do you get what I'm saying? If you wait too long, especially if like the PA is still technically constructive, it does make sense. And if you're trying to offset that range, then obviously you want to hold higher. Do you guys understand that concept? You have to try understanding this from like a range perspective. You can't offset if you go lower. Does that make sense? So if you're holding around here, there's the 1.75 we talked about this morning. Does that give us a higher odd this time of taking out, let's say, 65.03.75? Or even like above 65 or 64.97, let's say. Does it give us an odd to get back to this break-even area here, like around 6498, which is where they took it to during these calculated periods, and right at 3. So could be a bit of a wall in between. But usually if you're trying to offset range, you have to technically hold a little bit higher. It doesn't mean that there isn't still risk on for like 8-7, 8-8, 8-9. It's just kind of the metric of like the risk that you'd have to take. And then you could set a stop that's a little bit wider. There's even reduction sticks here too. Yep, well that's why you take a straddle type position. So if you do a very tight long like this, let's say off 9-2, 9-3, would 9-6, 9-7 area be an area to maybe cover half, you think? Especially if they're kind of tightening the range now? Yeah, because on the second stall here, then all this reduction in range, and the longer and longer that they keep extending, the higher the odds that they're going to actually break it down the second time around. Do you get what I'm saying? Could they easily negate? So 3.75 would take this back to like 6,500. There's a lot of overhead around 649,875, 6,499, 6,500. So like just beneath that opening range low. We also had odds at 3.6, which is why they can still keep it back and forth between 90, 91, 92. Could you afford to stall 9.7 at this point in time, though, you guys think? On the third attempt of 9.1, 9.2. What do you guys think? At this point in time. 9.7, 9.725 is the wall. This area here. Yeah, probably not. You'd have to have some sort of constructive PA. This is where you could start probably tightening your stops. Okay. This is roughly the area that seems calculated here, so yeah, but do you see how they had a window here between, so the window here to break down was around 2.728, they held. The secondary window goes from 30 to 3.6. Do you see what they're trying to do? What are they doing right here? And I drew this box earlier. So noob, I get what you're saying, but do you see how you're falling for the trap? Because this is the neutral box. You don't really progress beneath 9.7 or above 9.1. Okay, you have to break either end here. And the longer and longer they keep this delayed, usually when you start doubling in time intervals, let's say, then it becomes a higher odd that you're gonna delay, and they probably want to do that for end of session. So do you see what I mean? Especially off like, let's say 3. Do you see how this is double the time now of like the 18, 19 minute intervals? Do you guys see this? So now that they've extended 50% of the time interval range, do you think that they have to break at this point in time now? What do you guys think? This would be like the 19 minute, like off our, what was that point? 302, 303. Because this was our earlier cutoff point, right? And then we had that final extension here. This is where I had covered the long and tried the short when they had that extension. Do you think that they could afford to stall during this point in time after doubling the time range? Like they tried back testing here and they didn't. Okay, they had the best odds of breaking down range close to here, like we said earlier, around 314, 15, and they held. These were kind of the stalls. Okay. They had another probability of backtesting here. They held. They had another probability here of breaking. They stalled. Okay, do you see it? Do you think they have time to fail here? At 339, 341. Nope. 64.97 retest here after a very solid hold at 64.92. I try to long off the 64.92 hold. This will probably be my last trade for the day, I think. I want to see if they can break structure here because it seems like they want to keep this pinnable into the close back to opening ranges. And based on what I was seeing here, it seemed like they wanted to try sustaining low since they kept building and basing higher structures by 1 point to 1.75, implying that they do want to come back and try retesting 6,500.75, 6,503.75, and maybe break by 1 point to 1.75 points in range, which would take us back to opening session of 6,504.50, I think it was. There's a lot of overhead here though between the 9,875.99, 50 and 6,500.25 area. We had some pretty good odds here of breaking the 9.7 wall as early as 3.9, ideally by 40, 41, 42, because there's a bit of a gap here between 4.2 and 4.5. So 40 would be the most ideal stick. This is like the time interval off that last delay here, okay? This is the 9.5 minute bar here at 4.1, which is the cutoff period. 6,497 close here at 40. 4.1 had some really good odds, especially off the 30-second interval. See if they test 9,875 first. Perfect range. I think I'm going to cover maybe half here, just in case they stall. Did this help you guys a little bit in terms of understanding that? I know it looked like they were going to break it down, but they actually weren't, based on what they did right here. Because if they want to break it down, they probably should have done it at 3.5. This 3.5 stick is very similar to the 14 stick right here and 15 stick. And it actually based higher, which means it had a better odd of actually breaking 9.7 this time around. You see the 9.875 stall? That was calculated. That was the reduction. So they had really high odds that they would stall 9.875 after breaking 9.7, which is really cool because that aligns so well with the ranges back here. There's a bit of an open gap window, which is nice because kind of gives us time to nest a little bit above 9.7, beneath 9.9 in here. We can retest 6,500.75, I think, as early as 3.45 probably. See how they're kind of just keeping this right in line here? Post 340, 339, above 9.7, beneath 9.9. There we go. That's the kind of sticks that you want to see, guys, at end of session here, especially off these types of ranges. Really nice sticks. I think this is where I'll cover. This is where I'll cover half. Is right here. That's a really nice move. Those calls actually doubled from that 9-1, 9-2 hold. Did that help you guys understand this kind of setup? So they have odds to clear here probably as early as like 4-5. If they can break it by 4-4, that's even better because it'll give us odds to push back to break 6503, 75, 6504 as early as this time period here. But a lot of people would have got caught short right here. And I could even tell by some of your commentary. You sold what? Caps lock, like the long or a short? Oh. How did you get caught, Noob, if you were on the stream, though? And I was telling you that there's really good odds that they'd probably hold, especially off like 3-5, 3-6. It's not just the price points, it's the timing. Like they're moving a little too slow, you know? Like if they wanted to break this down, they had to do it at 3-4, 3-5. Same thing with this 2-4 to 2-7 period, and they kept holding higher. Same thing with this 13, 14, 15 period. The short trade is still nice though too, but hey, we have really good odds, guys, here right now. Since 4-4, 4-5, tested 6,500.5. There's some odds at 4-6, 7, 8. Or sorry, 4-5, 4-6, 4-7. I'm not sure if there's an odd at 4-8. I could be off by a minute, but it seems like 4-7 was the range of retesting 6503.75, especially if they can get back over the 6,500.75 wall. Oh, it's okay. This is where we tried it. I tried it off that 3-4, 3-5 hold at 9-2. Initially, I added right here off the 2-7, 2-8 hold. And then covered half and then re-added back here. Yeah, it was good timing too. It was like the exact metrics. So I think this is because they doubled in time from like that interval right here. This was like the 39-minute cutoff right here. So I think we said from this 3-9, we're probably, oh, actually, sorry guys, then we're probably hitting close to like 4-8 and 4-9. This area here. But I think we had some early odds right here to retest at 4-7. $4-7 was the earliest odd I had of retesting 6503.75. But I guess from our 3-9 and 40 clearance, then yeah, that would make sense because this would be like the 8-minute mark, 9-minute mark, 9.5. So the 9.5 is right at 350, just FYI. And that's off our 340 clearance. So 340, and I guess like the highest odd would have been like 351, but I had an early odd at 4-7. 6503.75 being retested here at 347. That's exactly the kind of price points you want to be testing at this point in time. I'm going to just delete this so you guys can see that. Do you see that mark? 6503.75 tested at 3:47 p.m. That's really good for odds because that was the earliest odd of testing that range, which can really help odds of breaking and clearing around 350, 351. I think it's 349 in 30-second interval. That's the actual mark here that we can watch. So in like the next minute, had the best odds of retesting opening range. We'll see. So that would be like this stick right here. Let's see. Let's see if I'm right about this. Where did they open today? 6504.50? This is the time interval that had the best odds of at least coming back to retest here and trying to test the opening range. There are some odds also right at 350 and 51. But off this mass stick break right here, I would imagine it's probably going to be the 350, 51. I want to see the kind of volatility we trigger though, because of stalling 6503.75 before 350. I know this looks crazy volatile, but they could easily turn it back around at 351 since there's an odd there. What's the range on that stick for 350? Because this can help us apply what the ranges should be here. So I didn't like that they stalled 6503.75 at that 349 stick, but I wonder if this equates to heading back to 6507.08. So let's see here. Probably have to hold, I would say, off 9.7, obviously. You'd need some really good negation sticks here at 5.1, 5.2 in order for this to stay in play. Remember how I said they could easily limit the range to be right back at OR this afternoon, especially because of where they took this at 3 o'clock. So it still keeps volatility risk in play of like a 1.5 above or a 1.5 below session lows, like real-time session lows, and then the real-time opening range, which is 6504.50. How important is it that 5.1 tries to negate? Especially off like the 30-second intervals here. Like back over 6500.75, 6501. What do you guys think? Because that's actually quite a lot of range in reduction. Where do you guys think they're going to pin the close? Let's do a poll quickly. Max range for real-time session 6504.50, 6505, 6507, or 6506, 75, 6507, 25, 6508, 50, 65, 12. Highs are in. What do you guys think? I'm going to set that to just a minute. My thoughts are if they can clear 6503.75, 6504 by like our generic flips at 354.55, then we still have some pretty good odds of retesting 6507. I think we said there was some overhead around 6508, 6510 if they do end up clearing very, very late in the session, but a lot of this is going to depend on where they take this to in the next 2 minutes. I would say you can't afford being beneath 0375 by 54. I think that's fair. What do you guys think? And we can maybe measure, we could maybe measure the interval in time from, let's say, our like cutoff stick here at 4.2. Okay, you see how this was the turnaround? Do you guys see this? This is 9.5. So this is like the turnaround period here, meaning that they could still give us 9 minutes into the close. So you could actually hit highs right at 4. Does that make sense to you guys? Because this would be the final, basically 18-minute interval. So lots of odds around 359, 4, 401. Okay? If we're measuring right off that 340 period that they turn this around, 357, 58, 59. So lots of odds right at the bell. Right at 359, 4, 401. Okay? But the condition would be that they'd have to probably clear 6503.75 right at this 354 mark. I don't think you can afford to stall there. You could probably do SPX into the close here too if they clear here, but obviously be careful. I'm just doing ES and SPY, so we'll know here in like the 30-second interval. because I don't think that they can afford to stall 6503, 75 again at this point in time, like off the 5-3 or 5-4, 5-5 sticks. So far stalling again. We'll give them 1 minute. What did you guys vote? Did you guys even vote? Highs are in, really? So majority think highs are in. Second odds are 6504, 50, 6504, 75. Okay. I think that they could easily tag 07 because we had so many calculated odds there. 6504, 75 being broken here at 355. This is exactly the kind of PA you want to see at this point in time. This is really good price action for 355. And I think if they can test 07 by, let's say, 5-8, then there's a slight odd that they could take out that range by that 1.75 that we talked about, or that 3.75. I don't remember exactly what it was. We had odds of getting to... We're not talking about the highs 65-16. I'm talking about real-time range. Our range this afternoon, we said, was around this 07, 08, 10, maybe 12, 13 area. I don't think that they had odds of getting back to real-time highs after they delayed back in here, but I guess we'll see. Maybe if they do it in like the last minute stick. But I think we said that we were capped at 65, 12, 13, 14. But probably more likely that they would take this near opening ranges, which so far is the case. But we have really high odds for 594, so they might give us that range then. I guess we'll see. Another way of thinking about it too is it could also be the... This is the 13-point break right here. Okay, so maybe once they actually clear 13 points, then maybe we have some odds of getting like a 17 to 22-point break. Do you see what I'm saying? That's why I don't think that they could break 65-14. So breaking the actual high of day... I wasn't referring to high of day, guys. I was referring to like the range that we were talking about, 6507. The real-time range. So I figured that they could take out 6507 based on the PA. And they can maybe give us... I feel like there's a lot of odds around 09. 6509, 6509, 75, that area there. If they can take out 0725 here at 5-8. Okay? That to me made the most sense, especially off this structural hold where I went long, because that would also be like a 17-point break, I think, around here. Okay? So I was thinking real-time range maybe closer to this area, only if they can break here at the 5-8 mark, because we had better odds around 401. So I guess we'll see. I'm going to look to cover here in a second. Let me just reset my chart. So far, stalling 6505. Did we have odds of stalling 6507 in real time? If they wanted to, based on the range differential of 1 to 1.75 points. What do you guys think? What do you guys think? Could they reduce range off highs by 1.75, 1 point, if they sustained? I'm surprised not many people voted for like 6506, 75, 6505, 50. I thought more people would vote for that range because there was a slight odd that if they wanted to reduce it in real time by 1 to 1.75, they could, which means that they would take it above 6500, 6501, maybe above OR by like 1.75, 1 point. Like, so like closer to 05, 06, but maybe beneath 07. I really felt like they could take out 07, but mostly if they were to break by 5.8. I thought that they could maybe stall closer to like this 08, 09 spot here. We'll see in a second. This is where I was thinking they'll stall is 09.50, 09.25, 7.5. But there was better odds at 4 o'clock of breaking that range. Real time had odds of stalling 65.07, closer to 06.50, 06.75. Do you see it? Look at that. 65.07 closed to the dot. That's insane. 65.08 stall. So they had better odds of taking out this range here after the bell. That's pretty insane. They hit exactly 65.07 at the final second. Do you see that? Look at that. I'm a little disappointed in some of your answers, though. And I think that would be probably off the 09. This is probably 1.25 to 1.75 beneath. This is kind of the overhead here. They pushed it final second too. That's so impressive. Oh wow, I actually filled on that. I didn't think that that would fill. I thought my exit entry was too high. I hope you guys caught that trade back to 65.07. So sorry, maybe I should have been more specific. By highs, I was talking about the real-time opening range highs, which was 65.07, 65.0725. So they had a slight odd of breaking that, and if they did, they would break it by how many points? So I was mostly referencing the real-time opening range, and based on these intervals of highs here. So they had odds of breaking it by how many points? Based on where they sustained. This is the last time I'll cover this because I feel like you guys should be. I would say a minimum of 1 point, potentially up to 2.25, 1.75, okay? So odds were likely that if they broke, they could break by a minimum of 1 point. Potentially, are you guys listening? This is why we had some odds. So this was like probably a minimum range, but they had some tiny odds that they could maybe break it. I would say that the 13-12 period was very, very important. They did have some odds that they could break this, but do you see why they had to take out 5.7 before 5.9? Like, I feel like if they stalled the 65.06 area, then odds were pretty high that they probably wouldn't break more than like this kind of range. I was thinking that after the bell, though, they could definitely maybe break close to, this is why 65.08, 65.0875, and then I said the max range is probably closer to this area here, which I think is like 2.25 points. And I think that was closer to the 09.25. That's why 09.25 could have been a max range for the real-time session if they cleared this range here. Okay, so very calculated around 65.08. 08, 0875, 0925, those could be some after hours overhead ranges here. I also figured that from real-time lows, they could break a 17-point ratio. They closed just beneath 17 points here from real-time lows. I thought that was kind of interesting. And then off this range here, they stalled 15.5, which they did that earlier. I don't know if you guys were paying attention to that, like this morning. Are you guys looking? Off those lows, do you see where they stalled? 15.5. Off our structural low here at 3536, 15.5. Isn't that interesting? So off the higher low, they stalled 15.5. Off the session opening low, they stalled 15.5. And it makes sense that there's these tiny reductions here of like 1 to 2 points, because they were trying their best to prevent this from breaking a 17-point ratio in real time. Because if they had done that, then we would have had those odds of 65.09, 50, 65, 08, 75, so on and so forth. So, and then this is where they might have been able to extend to 65.14. Those odds were pretty low though, based on what they did at the 58 mark. Like 58 basically implied the kind of range that they would give. Does that make sense, guys? Because do you see this? That 3.5 point reduction, that would have already given us at least 65.08. So, and then the 350 reduction stick also reduced range by, I would say, like at least 5 points. Okay, so like 5.25 would have been around 65.0875. Both of these ranges implied 65.0875. So that means that had they pushed, you see how we could have had 13 if we didn't have some reduction at 350, 358. They could have pushed maybe like the 13 area, 12 area, 14.25, and like I said, max range would be close to like 1450. They had really low odds that they would actually take out high of day. Probably trap closer to 12 and 14. So that means we could actually trigger those after the bell though. So they could break, if they break 087509, they could definitely try testing 6512, 13, 14. I didn't really have good odds that they would take out this area here, but anyway. Any questions, guys, before I sign off? This is also the 17-point break here, so they have to close over 650725, which is also the high break from real-time open. And we can maybe set it so that this is probably our max ranges for the session today. We had some really nice trades. That was a nice end-of-day trade, if anyone tried that with me. I hope I saved you guys from the short. Looks like some of you guys kind of just got caught and stuck to whatever, I don't know, theory you had. I don't think the short theory was wrong. I just feel like they ran out of time because they should have broken down closer to here. Also not very, it's not very easy to tell people that you're going long at lows, you know? It's kind of hard because then people follow your trades and then some people don't really know how to trade it. I knew though that going long right here, that I would have to afford having like a 3-point stop out. Does that make sense? So I would risk taking 3 points out down here in this area between 9.1, 9.2, 9.3, knowing that they had odds of breaking 65.04 by that same interval. Okay? Thank you. Yeah, I did too. I added on that 3.6 stick after covering half at 9.7 when it stalled here. And then I covered that last short contract the same time that which maybe I should have waited actually to cover that last short contract till 3.38, 39. That was maybe one mistake I had actually, is I covered that last short contract a little too early, because I maybe should have waited till that cut off around 3.38, 39, 40, but no problem. I'm glad you covered at a good time. And my sister was good. His birthday was good. I just got her a cake from the Italian bakery and some clothes from Lululemon for back to school for the, I don't know. I didn't really know what to get her. So I just got her like new pants, new leggings, and new sweater, sweats, stuff like that. Yeah, especially here when it gets cold and like it's going back to that season like in the morning, like if she's doing drop-offs and stuff like that too. I should have traded her account this afternoon though. I went to go place an order and then I didn't. I should have bought it for her too. I just thought it would be hard to manage the 2 accounts this afternoon off that spot. But that sucks. I wish I did take it for her here. I still have 3 contracts of those SPY calls left though. I want to see if they can actually break this this wall, because they had some odds after the bell and just before the 4:15 close. So let's see, because my target was closer to like this area here before 415. For futures, we can probably get 13, 14. For SPY contracts, I think we're gonna be limited maybe to the 0950 spot that I was talking about in the next few minutes. Now I'm sad that I didn't take that trade for my sister. I should have taken that for her. So market today, guys, was moving in about 17 to 19 minute intervals, I noticed. Okay, so if you want to go back and review tonight, you could probably do that. You can see here too, like a lot of these setups, especially on the turnaround periods. That means they could maybe stall right here. This is off the 350 stick. This, I want to see the 355. Yeah, see how that's like right at 414? That's why they could break like right into like the SPY contracts closing. We'll see. If you guys are good though on questions, who was asking about JD earlier? I used to have JD charted. I don't know which template. Oh, on NQ too, I also want to point this out. They did a really good job of holding neutral range on NQ today, but then stalling that 23,893 range. So this is kind of like the intermediate area, I guess. A little bit of reduction on this stick here. I think we could get that. That's 2.25. So yeah, that could keep our 65.1075 in play here, guys. Let's see. If we don't hit 65.09 at least, or 65.0950 by this point in time, I would be a little bit surprised. I'm starving though, so I want to sign off soon. I actually didn't. I didn't really make coffee today. Do you believe that? I actually traded without really drinking coffee today. I don't know why. Maybe that's why I'm so hungry. I had a final sell on. I did the ES contracts off that 64.92 hold, but I did SPY 647s. And I had covered most at that $1.90 mark, but I want to see if I can get some fills at 2. If not, I'll just cover here. The odd was at 14 though, so I guess we'll see if they want to break this little wall. I think my range calculation though was really good, guys, like 65.0850, 65.09.25. That was a really good max range for real-time session. It does suck that they limited it a little bit with the 5/8 stick though. This stick right here. What should I eat? I don't even know what to eat. I'm hungry though, but I have no idea what I should eat. What should I eat today? Doesn't look like they're gonna do it. I'll wait till like the final seconds here, and I'll just put a sell order in. They might be bastards and do it like right after the 15 mark. I covered. I'll probably do it right here. Overnight conditions, guys, we're still stuck in the zone, so obviously I want to hold 6488 overnight. Like, that would be ideal to hold overnight, especially pre, you know, PPI coming up this week. And then I would prefer that they try expanding a little bit this time. So we never really had too many breaks of 6520s. I feel like overnight tonight, we want to at least try taking out the 65, 16, 17 area. Maybe test 18, 19. There's a lot of overhead around 21, 21.75, 22, 23.75, I think. Maybe some slight overhead there. So I don't think that they could fill the full zone to 3231. So, but I do think that based on this kind of neutral close, they could definitely give us maybe at least a retest of 14. Maybe they stall 14 a little bit, break this area here. Like, these would be some good overnight tests just to see if they give us a better opening range for real time tomorrow. But we want to keep this in the zone ideally. Okay, so the theme for 6488, the theme for pre-CPI PPI release is keep us in the zone, okay, and give us a slight odd of maybe getting into the channel, which would be the 6536, 6540, 44. What's the big overhead for this week? Don't get this wrong. What's an area that has a huge overhead for this week from the report? And this is a big spot that has lots of confluence. If, I'll give you a hint, if they take out highs. So if they take out 6536, 6541, what's the area that has a really strong overhead this week? And there was multiple confluence around this range. What area is that? That's something you guys should know ahead of Wednesday and Thursday, especially if they stall that range there. What's that spot? I'd say close to here, 65, 44, 75, 42, 46, 48. This is a huge area, okay? So we've got a lot of overhead just around that top of the channel, okay? So just slightly above 65.42, just beneath 65.49, 48, okay? Keep that in mind. So there's lots of overhead in the 65.40s. It's super, super strong overhead there. So where they take us to today is obviously going to make like a huge difference. If they end up closing us in this neutral range, that's not bad. Hopefully we get at least a 65.08 close. Let's say they close us here. This is probably going to be a 34-point range. Yeah, it is. Look. Do you see that? So if we can get a close around like 08, 09, these would be like 33, 34-point ranges back to highs. So some more confluence there. And then obviously we want to try, we obviously want some nice structure breaks, right, to like the 4950. But even if they close us around 06, 07, they might limit us around that 50 spot. So still going to be a big overhead for the week. Do you see this? So we'll see. I think if they can close us around the 0910, it just adds more confluence to what I said in the report with 65, 42, 43, 46 area having a lot of overhead. These would also be like the 64, 66 point ranges off today's lows. So that's actually really cool too. So off close, 34-point range is right around the 65.44 mark. Off lows, it's around 65.48, 65.46. So it just kind of adds to that confluence there that 65.40s could be a big overhead this week. Do they have an odd of getting priced in at the channel? I'm not saying that they will, but let's say they stall the channel area. Do they have an odd of doing that and then coming right back to the zone and just closing off the end of week to wait for next week? Yes, and the only reason why that could be the case is because we have higher odds for next week. So if they don't want to test annual ranges this week, annual ranges being the 65.55 to 65.66 area. All right. If they take us to annual ranges as early as this week, then we have pretty good odds of tagging the 6,600 mark by the 1617. Okay, that's the next area that we want to eventually try getting to. All right, guys, I'm going to sign off. I hope you guys have a good afternoon.